They were well-dressed, well-organized, and preyed on the well-to-do. When it came to robbing hotels, they had no reservations. The Hotel Pierre was their last and greatest caper. Each year, millions come to New York City to make a fortune or to spend one. And in 1970, one gang came here to steal one. While most of the city's wealth was socked away in banks and real estate, a small but surprisingly lucrative portion of it lay in the security boxes of New York's finest hotels. The robbers learned to mine this resource, turning hotel heists into a science. Most thieves targeted the upstairs guest rooms, but these criminals seldom left the lobby. The men, usually two or more, would sweep in late at night, hold the staff at gunpoint, and restrain them. Then they'd break open the security boxes one by one. They used surprise to their advantage. None of the victims got a good look at the culprits, or they were too startled to recall any details. Police had only a sketchy description to go by. White men in their 30s, dark hair, dressed for the occasion, one of them wearing a wig.
They were always well-dressed, especially in the good hotels. They would have to wear, according to the area and fit. They had to fit in place. So they would be wearing the proper clothing for that hotel.
They honed their skills while robbing more than 24 hotels over the year. Each time, they had successfully evaded police. There seemed to be no stopping them.
They were occurring with such frequency that the police department put together a particular unit to look into and guard against these hotel jewel robberies.
And yet, the crime wave was one of New York's best-kept secrets.
These hotels are first-class hotels. Their clientele are the upper crust, the upper echelon of society. It is not in their best interest to publicize or to assist in publicizing these kinds of incidences.
They frustrated the police, always seeming to be one step ahead, and growing bolder with each heist. On August 5th, 1970, they paid an early morning visit to the posh Regency Hotel. They subdued 15 people with handcuffs and tape with relative ease. The safety boxes presented more of a challenge. After an hour, they had cracked only 17 of them, but the thieves were not so easily discouraged. They commandeered a dolly from a window washer, beginning his early morning rounds. They removed some of the boxes and a small safe, rolling them to their getaway car. The boxes were found on Long Island a few days later.
I noticed this commotion going on, and
None of the 15 hostages could give a clear description of the criminals.
It was very dark.
Robbing security boxes was daring, but stealing the actual boxes was outrageous. The audacity of the crime earned it a mention in the New York Times crime sheet. It won a place in the gossip column, too. Elizabeth Taylor had checked into the Regency the night before. Fortunately, she kept her $2 million collection in her suite.
Regency was very important because that's the first one that they got front page notoriety on.
The notorious heist inspired the thieves to alter their modus operandi. 2 months after Elizabeth Taylor's visit to New York, Sophia Loren was seen on TV and around town promoting her latest film and wearing an enormous diamond. Loren became the next target. The plan swung into effect on Sunday, October 11th, 1970.
Oh, in for the night, Miss Loren.
Yes, I am.
Once they were sure that Sophia Loren was in her suite at the Hampshire house, they donned their disguises and made their move. The time was 7:15 Sunday morning. As usual, the gang had planned it perfectly. At that hour, the hotel had a small staff on duty. They had no trouble taking the hotel.
Take me to Sophia Loren's room. Now.
Shut up, get out. Grab the jewels. Grab the jewels. Grab the jewels. Watch them. Plug them if they move.
Don't move. Where are the jewels? Don't move.
In only a few minutes, the robbers had handcuffed the hotel employees, bagged the valuables, and walked out the door with an estimated $500,000 worth of uninsured jewels.
We knew that they were getting more daring. That's what it told us, that, instead of just hitting the boxes downstairs, they were going upstairs.
The thieves were targeting high-profile victims, but their style and technique hadn't changed. Police knew this was the work of the same gang. They'd likely try to fence the gems out of state, so the FBI joined forces with the police. The crooks felt the heat. They laid low for a full year.
They weren't going to be that brazen of going out there and hitting somebody right away. So they were dodging the FBI at the same time, and the local police from New York.
An informant told the FBI that the masterminds of the hotel capers were two men, a man named Bobby from Rochester and someone called Sammy the Arab. While agents tried to follow up on this scant information, the crime wave seemed to have ended. But in truth, the gang was planning its biggest heist of all.
They were always looking for the score of all scores, the big one, that they can retire on.
The Hotel Pierre, one of New York's finest addresses for luxury apartments and lavish guest suites. While many of its residents spent the winter abroad, its guest rooms were filled with visitors who came to New York for the festivities of the 1971 holiday season. Holiday parties, of course, require formal attire and one's best finery. Guests at the Pierre had little reason to doubt that their valuables were safe in the hotel's security boxes. The hotel robbers were planning a New Year's celebration of their own. At 4 a.m. on January 2nd, 1972, a limousine pulled up in front of the Hotel Pierre. It was an unremarkable event.
Good evening. We have reservations. Can you open up, please?
All right, okay. Hey, what's going on here? Shut up, you stupid! What are you doing? Over there. Let's go. Go, take your way. Don't even do it! Back up!
While the desk clerk was being captured, another robber headed to the other entrance and confronted the guard there, forcing him at gunpoint into the lobby. It was the night auditor's habit to leave the vault door open while he worked. Nothing stood between the crooks and the safety boxes. They subdued 14 people in 15 minutes.
So they round up everybody, handcuff them, tape their mouths, tape their eyes. There were only one or two people who even was able to see the faces of these people, much less identify them.
The robbers usually broke in and moved out within an hour, but at the Pierre, progress was hampered by the number of boxes. The men knew a treasure lay within these walls, but they didn't know which of the boxes held it. The first ones they broke open were disappointing. They didn't have the time to go through all 200. Soon the lobby would be filled with guests, jeopardizing their meticulous plan.
Everything had to be precise. The timing had to be exact. And they hoped that nothing would come, interfere with that. The people coming in and out of the hotel, even at night, or that time of the morning, you'll have people going and walking their dog.
Let's try this one. That one was good. There!
Look, we need to know who owns the boxes.
Keep going down. Keep going.
In desperation, one of the robbers grabbed the night auditor.
Do it! My eye on you. Go! Go!
He forced him to turn over the list of box holders.
I want to know who owns the boxes. Where are the cards?
What's taking so long?
For the thieves, it was the treasure map they needed.
Give them to me. Turn around, don't look at me.
The list put them back on track.
2108.
Do it.
Hold on. 2108.
They chose the boxes of the most prominent guests and tenants.
118.
Oh, yeah.
62. 206.
Oh, come here. What's that?
Just before 5 a.m., the men were alarmed by the sound of the front desk phone. All activity stopped. Ignoring it would arouse suspicion. One of the gang picked it up. The call was from inside the building. A guest had been calling for the elevator, but it hadn't shown up. She didn't know that the elevator operator was being held hostage 37 floors below. To preserve the illusion of normality, one of the men went to get the guest. 3 more people became hostages, bringing the total to 19.
Even when some things happened, they reacted appropriately and dissipated what could have been, the end of the heist.
Get it. Get it.
All right, quiet.
Got it. Go. Come on.
The men had cracked only 47 of the 200 boxes,
Do it. Come on.
but they had almost more than they could carry,
Come on.
and much more than they imagined.
There. All right, look, that's enough. There's nothing in there. That's enough. Let's go.
Come on.
All right.
Come on.
Go.
One safety box alone contained $800,000 in cash and jewels.
Go.
But dawn was breaking, and New York would soon be waking up. The thieves instructed the hostages not to move, and then threatened to find and kill anyone who identified them to police. Detectives found it difficult to appraise the theft. Many of the box holders were spending the winter abroad, and only they knew the value of the stolen goods. It would take time to track them down. Tracking the culprits would be even more difficult. Within 2 days of the robbery, a conservative estimate of the damage was made.
In the early reports, the papers had come out with $1 million and $4 million, that they estimated $4 million. But we never got a true figure from the people. We estimate over $10 million.
25 officers were assigned to the case, but the public wasn't sympathetic to the plight of the Pierre. They felt that nobody got hurt but some rich people, and police were being diverted from fighting more serious crimes in the city. The authorities didn't see it that way.
The police commissioner and I figured out what we wanted to tell the public, and we announced that, look, these people have knocked over a great many hotels. You can't leave them out there. Nobody got killed, but the next time somebody might. There were guns. This was armed robbery. This was a terrible crime.
Investigators knew that the cash would probably never be recovered. But millions of dollars in jewels would need to be fenced. That many gems was bound to draw attention. First, they'd have to be pried from their settings to make them untraceable. Then they must be exchanged for cash. The robbers would have to find someone with connections, someone who didn't ask a lot of questions. It was almost the perfect crime, but now the thieves' luck would begin to turn. In order to separate themselves from the heist, they hired someone else to fence the jewels for them, a man named Dom Paulino. Paulino contacted a broker named Bert Stern, saying he had a large amount of jewels and some negotiable bank securities to sell. Stern told his partner, who was secretly a paid FBI informant. As a gesture of good faith, the informant purchased some of the securities. The FBI traced them back to the Pierre heist.
The entire investigation begins with Stern contacting the informant saying, I am one of the people who was involved in that robbery. I can fence you all of the jewels that were stolen there.
On January 7th, 5 days after the heist, the informant set up a meeting to purchase some of the jewels. Paulino and his gem broker Bert Stern went to the Summit Hotel to have a sample of the gems appraised by an independent jeweler. Paulino told the jeweler that this was just a sample of what was to come.
That's just a sample of what we got.
Stern, satisfied with what he saw, left the two men to take care of business. Because the informant had arranged for the hotel room and paid for it with FBI money, federal agents didn't need a warrant.
FBI, you're under arrest!
The FBI nabbed Paulino and the jeweler in the room, while Stern was arrested downstairs. But the men held only $250,000 worth of gems. Millions were still missing. Police knew that more people were involved. A receipt in Paulino's pocket led them to their next suspect, Bobby Comfort. Comfort, age 39, had a history of robbery and other offenses stretching back 20 years. Most of it was minor. It was a good bet that he was the mysterious Bobby from Rochester, but authorities had no way to connect him to anything as big as the New York City hotel heists until now. As soon as authorities caught up with him, he began to taunt the police, in the process incriminating himself and naming his partner.
They got him. Comfort starts talking about, you'll never get Sammy.
But detectives were on to Sammy the Arab, who had a half-dozen aliases and no fixed address. A tip led to a woman who had been to his place in the Bronx. She didn't know the address, but she knew what the building looked like.
And she had, after a few hours of driving around the Bronx, we found the apartment.
And they found Sammy just as he was leaving.
Hey, that's it, look.
Sammy, whose real name was Sorecho Nelo, was a career criminal. He was suspected of being involved in a murder 18 months earlier, but was never charged. He wasn't so lucky this time. Police found him disposing of the incriminating evidence in an alley. It was enough to obtain a warrant to search Nelo's apartment. There, police found a gold scale, a black wig, almost $6,000 in cash, Nalo's passport, and a half-packed suitcase. In his jacket pocket were jewelry settings. What was conspicuously absent were the $10 million worth of cash and gems. Nalo was taken into custody. All of the suspects were charged with possession of stolen property. But authorities didn't believe that Paulino, Stern, or the jeweler took part in the actual theft. Things were sorted out
That's him.
in a lineup. A hostage recognized Nalo and Comfort, who were then charged with robbery. But where were the jewels? The question would be answered 2 days later, when FBI agents in Detroit got a call.
The fellow in Detroit went to the FBI, hearing and seeing the newspapers that about this great robbery that was committed in New York at the Hotel Pierre. He knew what he had because he was given a bundle to hold for Sammy. It must have been for a rainy day.
Authorities had now recovered $1 million worth of the stolen jewels. They estimated that that was only 10% of what was still out there. Also out there were 2 other accomplices. Sammy Nalo and Bobby Comfort refused to reveal the names of the other men who helped rob the Pierre that night. They feared reprisals against their families. That wasn't the only problem.
The FBI refused to identify their informant. They also refused to identify the agent who controlled the informant. And as a result, no strong case could be made against these guys, these suspects, these robbers.
Without the informant's testimony, the prosecution couldn't legally justify the raid on the Summit hotel room and the evidence collected there. The district attorney had to face the grim possibility that the culprits might walk away scot-free. Based on the evidence the prosecution could use, Paulino, Stern, and the jeweler were convicted of criminal possession of stolen property. Nalo and Comfort, who could have received 25 years, were sentenced to 7 years each for second-degree robbery and related charges. The sentence was later reduced to 4 years. Comfort ended up serving 2.5.
The biggest haul that they had, of all the hotels that they hit and the people that they hit, the Hotel Pierre was their downfall.
14 years after the Pierre heist in 1986, Bobby Comfort died. He was 53. Shortly after Nalo's release, he was arrested for robbing a jewelry store and was back in prison. The remainder of the Pierre cash and jewels have never been recovered. There are no more leads.